The restaurant buzzed with celebration, glasses clinking, laughter floating between tables. But at ours, there was only silence. Heavy, deliberate silence. I sat there in my graduation gown, the polyester still stiff, the tassel from my cap tickling my neck, while my father stared at my diploma like it was a piece of trash. Environmental science, he scoffed, tossing the diploma onto the table. What are you going to do with that? Save trees. My mother sipped her wine, carefully avoiding my eyes. My sister Emma scrolled through her phone, a tiny smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. I gripped my water glass tightly, trying to keep my voice steady. I have some good job prospects, I said. There's a startup working on sustainable energy solutions. Startup. Dad laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. You mean those tech kids playing with their parents' money? That's not a real job, Marcus. I felt my cheeks burn. The startup had actually offered me a significant position, with stock options and everything. But I knew better than to mention that. Dad only respected traditional business, the kind that had nearly bankrupted him twice. You'll never amount to anything, he continued, shaking his head. All that money we spent on college. And this is what we get. The table erupted in laughter. My Aunt Patricia snorted into her cocktail. Uncle Dave slapped the table, tears in his eyes. Even my cousins, barely teenagers, joined in. I sat there, frozen, as my entire family laughed at my future. Emma finally looked up from her phone. At least he graduated, she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Even if it's with some hippie degree. Speaking of real degrees, Mom chimed in, brightening. Emma's law school acceptance came yesterday. Harvard. Just like that, the attention shifted. Emma preened as congratulations poured in. Dad beamed with pride, ordering another bottle of champagne. I sat there, invisible, watching them celebrate the golden child while my diploma lay forgotten between the bread basket and a half-eaten appetizer. I excused myself quietly, walking to the bathroom on shaky legs. In the mirror, I stared at my reflection minus 22 years old, fresh-faced, wearing a gown that suddenly felt like a costume. Their laughter echoed in my head, mixing with years of similar moments. You'll never amount to anything. I splashed cold water on my face, letting it drip down my chin. That's when I made a decision. Not a dramatic one, not the kind you see in movies where someone flips a table and storms out. No, my decision was quieter, colder, and far more final. I returned to the table, sat through another hour of Emma's praise and thinly veiled jabs at my choices. I smiled when appropriate, nodded when expected, and kept my mouth shut. But inside, something had shifted. Like a switch being flipped, I felt myself disconnecting from their expectations, their judgments, their entire world. The next morning, I declined the family brunch Mom had planned. Instead, I sat in my tiny apartment, looking at the offer letter from Ecotech Solutions, the startup everyone had laughed at. The position they'd offered wasn't just entry level. They wanted me to head their environmental impact assessment division. The salary wasn't huge, but the stock options. I signed the contract that afternoon. What happened over the next 5 years would have made an interesting story for that graduation dinner, if any of them had bothered to stay in touch. Ecotech Solutions didn't just survive, it thrived. Our sustainable energy solutions caught the attention of major tech companies. My department's innovations in environmental impact assessment became industry standard. I worked 16-hour days, lived on coffee and determination, and poured every ounce of my father's doubt into proving him wrong. The stock options I'd been given, They multiplied in value as the company grew. I didn't tell my family when we went public. I didn't share the news when my initial options made me a millionaire on paper. I bought a modest apartment, drove a reliable hybrid car, and invested everything else. While Emma posted photos of lavish vacations and designer purchases on social media, I built something sustainable, something real. Then came the call I'd been half expecting for years. "Marcus?" My mother's voice was thin, strained. "We need to talk." I was in my office, overlooking the city skyline. Ecotech now occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. "What's wrong, Mom?" It's your father's company. Things aren't good." I knew this already. I'd been tracking Harrison and Sons construction for years, watching as Dad's old-school methods and resistance to environmental regulations slowly ate away at their market share. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very things he'd mocked me for studying were now industrial requirements he couldn't adapt to. "How bad is it?" I asked, though I already knew. "The bank, they're foreclosing. On everything. The company, the house." Her voice cracked. Emma tried to help, but her firm's been struggling too. Law isn't what it used to be. And with her lifestyle. I pulled up my banking app while she talked. My portfolio had just crossed 8 figures. The notification sat there, a quiet validation of every doubt they'd ever thrown at me. "Marcus, are you there?" "I'm here, Mom." I kept my voice neutral. "What do you need?" "We need help. Your father, he's too proud to ask, but we're going to lose everything. The house we raised you in. The house. 4 bedrooms, colonial style. The scene of countless dinners where I was reminded of my inadequacies. Where Emma's achievements were displayed like trophies, while my accomplishments were dismissed as luck or flukes." "How much?" I asked. She named a figure that would have terrified me 5 years ago. Now it was barely a dent in my monthly earnings. "I'll think about it," I said. "Marcus, please. We're family." Family. The word hit differently now, hollow and meaningless. "I'll let you know," I replied, and ended the call. That night, I didn't go home to my apartment. Instead, I drove to our old neighborhood, parked across from the house that had never really felt like home. The foreclosure sign was already up, stark white against the manicured lawn Dad had always been so proud of. I pulled out my phone, made a call to my investment manager. "James? Remember that residential property we discussed?" "Yes, the one in foreclosure. I want to move forward. Full cash offer, above asking. Make it happen quietly, through one of the shell companies." The next week passed in a blur of paperwork and strategic meetings. Mom called daily, each message more desperate than the last. Dad's voice appeared in later ones, gruff and strained, talking about family duty and responsibility. Emma sent texts about how selfish I was being, how I should help our parents in their time of need. I saved every message. Finally, the day came. I sat in the bank's conference room, pen hovering over the final purchase agreement. The house would be mine, bought through a company they didn't know I owned. They would never know their savior was the son they'd laughed at. "Mr. Harrison?" The bank manager looked concerned. "Are you ready to sign?" I thought about that graduation dinner, about the laughter that had echoed around that restaurant table, about the diploma tossed aside like garbage, about years of being told I'd never amount to anything. "Actually," I said, straightening in my chair, "I have a better idea." I pulled out my phone, dialed a number I'd memorized but never used. "Dad, Can you and Mom come down to First National? There's something you need to see. They arrived 30 minutes later, Dad still wearing his construction company polo, Mom clutching her outdated designer purse. Their faces fell when they saw me sitting at the conference table. Marcus? Dad's voice was a mix of confusion and anger. What are you doing here? I smiled, sliding the purchase agreement across the table. Buying a house. They looked at the papers, recognition dawning slowly. Mom gasped. Dad's face turned red, then white. This is our house, he stammered. Was your house, I corrected gently. Now it's bank property, unless someone buys it. You. He spat the word like it tasted bad. You can't afford this. You work for some tree-hugging startup. I pulled out my phone again, opened my portfolio, and placed it in front of him. Watched as his eyes widened at the numbers, as his hands began to shake. That startup? I said quietly. It went public last year. I'm the executive director of environmental innovation. Those stock options you laughed at, they're worth more than your company ever was. Mom started crying. Dad just stared at the phone, at the numbers that represented everything he'd said I couldn't achieve. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice steady. I'm going to sign these papers. The house will be mine, and you're going to move out. Marcus, please, Mom sobbed. We're your parents. Yes, I agreed. You are. And at my graduation dinner, when I needed parents most, you laughed when Dad said I'd never amount to anything. Do you remember that night? Silence fell over the conference room. Heavy, suffocating silence. I remember every word, I said, picking up the pen. Every laugh. Every dismissal. Every time you chose Emma's law degree over my hippie science. Every moment you made me feel worthless. I signed my name with a flourish, then stood up. You have 30 days to vacate the property. The bank will provide the official notice. Don't call me again. As I walked to the door, Dad's voice stopped me, broken, barely above a whisper. Where are we supposed to go? I turned back one last time, met his eyes across the conference room. Maybe Emma can help. After all, she's the one who amounted to something, right? The door closed behind me with a soft click, but in my mind, it sounded like thunder. Like an ending, like justice. In my car, I sat for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. Through the bank's windows, I could see them still sitting there, staring at the papers that represented the end of their world and the beginning of mine. My phone buzzed, a text from Emma. How dare you do this to our parents? You heartless bastard. You'll regret this. I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time since that graduation dinner. 5 years ago, her words would have cut deep. Now they were just noise. I started the car, typed a quick response before pulling away from the bank. No, Emma, I won't regret this. But you might want to start saving money. I hear Harvard law degrees aren't worth what they used to be. As I drove back to my office, past the gleaming buildings where my hippie environmental science was now shaping the future, I felt lighter. The weight of their expectations, their judgment, their constant disappointment, it was all gone. I'd amounted to something after all, just not what they wanted me to be. And that made it even sweeter. The weeks that followed were a symphony of chaos. My phone became a constant stream of messages, from distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years, family friends who suddenly remembered my existence, and of course, the endless barrage from Emma and my parents. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the renovation plans for the house. Not because I planned to live there. My downtown apartment suited me perfectly, but because I wanted to transform it into something entirely new, something that would erase every bitter memory those walls contained. Then came the letter. It arrived at my office in a cream-colored envelope, Emma's precise handwriting on the front. Inside was an invitation to a family reconciliation dinner at her house, along with a 3-page letter detailing why I was being cruel and unreasonable. Our parents made mistakes, she wrote, but they gave us everything. How can you be so heartless? Everything. I stared at that word until it blurred. They hadn't given me everything. They'd given me conditions, expectations, and constant reminders of my inadequacy. Emma got everything. I got whatever was left. I was about to toss the invitation when my assistant knocked on my door. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. Says she's your sister?" Emma stood in my office doorway, looking both perfectly put together and slightly desperate. Her designer suit couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes or the way her hands trembled slightly. "Nice office," she said, trying for casual, but missing by miles. "Very. Green. What do you want, Emma?" She moved further into the office, eyes darting around the awards on my walls, the view from my windows, the clear signs of success she hadn't believed possible. "I want to understand," she said finally. "This isn't you, Marcus. You're not vindictive. You're not cruel. What happened to my little brother who used to help me with my science projects?" "He grew up," I replied coldly. "He realized those science projects were the only time you acknowledged his existence." "That's not fair." She dropped into one of my visitor chairs. "I always supported you." "Really?" I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my saved photos. Here's you at my graduation dinner, laughing while Dad called my degree worthless. Here's your Instagram post about how some people waste their education on lost causes. Here's your text from last Christmas about how I should stop pretending to be successful and come work for Dad's company. She flinched at each example. "I was wrong, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I was wrong, and you proved us all wrong. You're successful. You won. Now can you please stop punishing our parents?" I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "This isn't about Mom and Dad, is it? What's really going on, Emma?" She crumbled then, tears spilling down her perfectly made-up face. "My firm is cutting partners. The market's changed, environmental law is huge now, and I don't have the expertise. The house I bought? I can't afford the payments. My savings are gone, and now I can't even help Mom and Dad. So that's why you're here," I said quietly. "You need money." "I need my brother," she corrected, but we both heard the lie in her voice. "The brother you laughed at? The one who'd never amount to anything." I stood up, walked to my window. "Tell me something, Emma. If I was still struggling, if that startup had failed, would you be here? Would you care about reconciliation then?" Her silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. I turned back to face her. "The house is mine. Mom and Dad need to be out in 2 weeks. And you should probably start looking for a smaller place to live. Marcus, please." "You know what the funny thing is?" I cut her off. "My company is actually launching a new environmental law division. We need experts who understand both the legal and scientific aspects. It could have been a perfect opportunity for you." Her eyes widened with hope. "But," I continued, "we only hire people who respect environmental science, who don't think it's a hippie degree or a waste of education." The hope in her eyes died. She stood up slowly, straightening her designer suit with trembling hands. "You've changed," she whispered. "No, Emma. I just stopped accepting the version of me you all created." After she left, I sat in my quiet office, looking at the empire I'd built from the degree it mocked. My phone buzzed with a text from the renovation contractor. They'd started work on the house. The message included photos of rooms being gutted, walls being stripped bare. It felt symbolic somehow, tearing down the old to build something new, something better. That evening, I drove past my parents' house, my house now. The moving truck in the driveway was small, barely big enough for a lifetime of memories. Mom stood in the front yard, watching as workers carried out boxes. She saw my car, raised her hand in a tentative wave. I didn't wave back. Dad appeared on the porch, looking older than I remembered. He stared at my car for a long moment, then turned away, disappearing back into the house they no longer owned. My phone rang. The contractor again. "Sir, we found something interesting in the master bedroom wall. Looks like a safe, old one. Need the owners to come open it before we can continue." I smiled, remembering the safe Dad had installed when I was 12. The one he'd never let me see inside, claiming it held important family documents that would someday go to Emma. "No need," I said. "I'll come handle it myself." The house smelled of dust and displacement when I arrived. The workers had gone home, leaving behind their tools and the skeletal remains of what had once been our family home. The safe was exposed now, the drywall around it removed. I ran my fingers over the combination lock, remembering the numbers I'd seen Dad input once when he thought no one was watching. It opened with a soft click. Inside, I found the expected documents, property deeds, insurance papers, old photos. But underneath those, in a worn manila envelope, I found something else. Letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me. College acceptance letters, not just from the state school I'd attended, but from top universities across the country. Full scholarships, research opportunities, everything I'd been told I couldn't achieve. They were all dated 5 years ago, all unopened. My hands shook as I read letter after letter. Opportunities I'd never known about. Futures that had been hidden away in a wall, denied to me because they didn't fit the narrative my family had created. I sank to the floor, surrounded by the proof of their betrayal, and finally understood. It had never been about my choices or my abilities. They had actively worked to keep me small, to maintain their control. My phone buzzed again. "Emma, did you know?" I answered without greeting. "Know what?" "About the college letters, the scholarships. Did you know Dad hid them from me?" Her sharp intake of breath was telling. "Marcus, you knew." My voice was ice. "You knew, and you let them do it. Let them force me into a school that barely accepted me, while these opportunities sat in a wall. They wanted to protect you," she whispered. "Those schools, they weren't part of the plan. Dad needed you in the family business. The business that's now bankrupt. I cut in. The plan that failed. Tell me, Emma, how does it feel knowing you helped them sabotage my future, only to watch me succeed anyway?" She started to respond, but I hung up. Sat there in the gutted remains of my childhood home, surrounded by the letters that proved every suspicion, every doubt, every moment of wondering what if had been justified. I took one last look at the pile of letters, then pulled out my phone and called my contractor. "Change of plans," I said. "I don't want to renovate this house. I want to tear it down completely. Every wall, Every room, every memory. I want it gone. Sometimes I realized success isn't just about proving them wrong. Sometimes it's about burning down the cage they built around you and building something entirely new from the ashes. The demolition would begin tomorrow. The sound of demolition equipment filled the quiet suburban morning. I stood across the street, watching as the house that held 22 years of carefully constructed lies came down piece by piece. Each crash of falling walls felt like vindication. A small crowd had gathered, neighbors, mostly, drawn by the spectacle. Among them, I spotted familiar faces. Mrs. Peterson, who used to tell everyone how Emma was going places while giving me pitying looks. The Richardsons, who never invited me to their sons' parties, but always made sure Emma was included. They whispered among themselves, stealing glances at me in my tailored suit and expensive watch. Then I saw them. My parents stood at the edge of the crowd, Mom clutching Dad's arm like she might collapse. They hadn't seen me yet, their eyes fixed on the demolition crew tearing into what had been their bedroom. I could have walked away, could have let them watch in anonymous silence. Instead, I walked over. Beautiful morning for a fresh start, isn't it? Mom flinched at my voice. Dad's face hardened, but I saw the flash of pain in his eyes. You're really doing this, he said. Not a question, but an accusation. No, Dad, you did this. I pulled out the manila envelope from my briefcase. When you hid these letters, when you decided my future wasn't mine to choose. Mom's hand flew to her mouth as she recognized the envelope. Those were private. Private? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to draw stares. They were my letters, my opportunities, my life you locked in a wall. We were protecting you, Dad growled. Those schools would have taken you away, filled your head with more nonsense about saving the world. Instead of working for your failing company, I cut in. Instead of following your path to bankruptcy. A particularly loud crash drew our attention. The crew was taking down the kitchen wall now, where height markers had tracked Emma's growth, but never mine. You know what's ironic? I continued, watching as chunks of our past rained down. If you'd let me go to any of these schools, if you'd supported my interests instead of crushing them, I might have actually helped your company. Environmental compliance is mandatory now. Companies that don't adapt die, just like yours did. Dad's face reddened. You ungrateful. Robert, please. Mom cut in, her voice trembling. Maybe we should just go. Yes, I agreed coldly. You should. There's nothing left for you here. As they turned to leave, Mom paused. What? What are you going to do with the property? I smiled, pulling out another document from my briefcase. You'll see soon enough. The city council approved my proposal yesterday. They walked away, shoulders hunched, looking older than I'd ever seen them. For a moment, I felt a flicker of, not regret, exactly, but something close to it. Then I remembered the letters, and the feeling vanished. My phone buzzed, a text from Emma. Mom's crying. Dad's drinking. Are you happy now? I typed back. I learned from the best, sis. Wasn't it you who said success is about making hard choices? The demolition continued through the day. I worked from my car, taking calls and signing contracts while watching my past disappear. By sunset, nothing remained but a cleared lot and scattered debris. The contractor approached, hard hat in hand. We'll have everything cleared by tomorrow, Mr. Harrison. The environmental survey team can start whenever you're ready. I nodded, looking at the empty space where my childhood home had stood. Perfect. Let's make sure every trace of the old structure is gone before we begin. That night, sitting in my office, I finalized the plans that would transform the property. The irony wasn't lost on me. The land that had housed so many dreams of traditional success would now become something entirely different. The local news picked up the story the next day. Tech executive to build environmental research center on family property. Harrison Innovation Hub. From family home to future of sustainable science. Local success story gives back to community. The headlines kept coming, each one a subtle reminder of how far I'd come from that laughing family at the graduation dinner. The center would partner with local schools, offering scholarships and opportunities to students interested in environmental science. Kids like me, who saw a different future than their parents planned. Emma showed up at my office again, clutching a newspaper with the announcement. An environmental research center? Her voice cracked. Really, Marcus? You're not just destroying their home, you're rubbing it in their faces? I looked up from my computer, studied her carefully. Her designer clothes looked slightly worn now, her jewelry less expensive. The first signs of downsizing. No, Emma, I'm building something meaningful. Something that will help other kids avoid what I went through. I leaned back in my chair. Though I admit, the location is satisfying. They're broken, Marcus. Mom barely eats. Dad, she hesitated. Dad's talking about moving away, starting over somewhere else. Good, I said simply. Change can be healthy. How did you become so cold? Cold? I stood up, walked to the window. I'm not cold, Emma. I'm finally warm, finally free. Do you know what it's like to discover your entire family conspired to hold you back? To find proof that every doubt, every suspicion was justified. She sank into a chair, looking defeated. We thought we were doing the right thing. Dad said those schools would waste your potential, that you needed structure, guidance. Control, I corrected. I needed control. And now look where we are. My hippie degree built this. I gestured to my office, the company beyond, while Dad's real business collapsed. And you won't help them, she said quietly. Won't help me. No, I agreed. I won't, because you never helped me. After she left, I drove to the cleared lot. Construction would begin next week. The center would rise from the ashes of my past, a beacon for future generations. My phone buzzed with a notification. Mom had posted on social media for the first time in weeks. Sometimes the hardest lessons come from those we hurt the most. Praying for understanding and forgiveness. I screenshot it, added it to my collection of family memories, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder. They were learning, finally learning, that actions have consequences. The sun set over the empty lot, casting long shadows where a house once stood. In the gathering darkness, I could almost see the ghosts of what had been. Family dinners where my voice was ignored, celebrations where my achievements were dismissed, moments of quiet desperation as I watched opportunities pass me by. But those ghosts no longer had power over me. I had built something they couldn't tear down, couldn't hide in a wall, couldn't laugh away at a graduation dinner. I had become exactly what they said I never would, and I was just getting started. 1 year later, I stood on the stage of the newly completed Harrison Innovation Center for Environmental Research, facing a crowd of eager students, proud parents, and local media. The irony of keeping the Harrison name wasn't lost on anyone who knew the story. Today, I began my speech. We're not just opening a building. We're opening doors, doors that some might try to close, doors that others might try to hide behind walls. In the back of the auditorium, I spotted Emma. She looked different now. Simpler clothes, fewer designer labels. She had finally taken a junior position at a small law firm, starting over from scratch. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away. Every student who walks through these doors will find something I was once denied: support, belief, and the freedom to pursue their dreams, no matter how unconventional those dreams might seem. The first scholarship recipients sat in the front row, 10 bright young minds who reminded me of myself at their age. Their parents beamed with genuine pride. No conditions, no hidden agendas, just pure support. Success isn't just about proving others wrong, I continued. It's about proving yourself right. About building something meaningful from the ruins of what others tried to force you to be. After the ceremony, as people mingled in the gleaming lobby, Emma approached me. "Mom and Dad watched the live stream," she said quietly. "They're in Arizona now. Dad's different. Quieter. He's been seeing a therapist." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "The center," she gestured around, "it's beautiful. And those kids, their faces when you announced the scholarships. Everyone deserves a chance," I said, "a real one, not one hidden in a wall." She flinched but held her ground. "I know it's too late, but I'm sorry, Marcus. Really sorry." For the first time in over a year, I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The designer armor was gone, replaced by something more authentic, more real. "It's not too late to change, Emma. It's just too late to change me." She nodded, understanding finally reaching her eyes. "The family reunion is next month, in Arizona. We'd like you to come." I looked around at the center, my real legacy. At the students clutching their scholarship certificates. At the future I'd built from the ashes of their expectations. "No," I said softly, "but thank you for asking." After she left, I walked through the center alone. Each room was equipped with state-of-the-art environmental research technology. The walls displayed quotes about innovation, conservation, and believing in oneself. In the main hall, a simple plaque caught my eye. "Never let anyone tell you what you can't become. Some dreams are too big for walls to contain." My phone buzzed, a text from Dad. The first in over a year. "The center. It's extraordinary. Just like you always were. I'm sorry I never saw it." I didn't respond, but I saved the message. Not as a trophy or vindication, but as a reminder that sometimes the biggest achievements come from our deepest wounds. The sun set through the center's solar panels, casting green-tinted shadows across the lobby. Tomorrow, the first class of students would begin their journey here. They would learn, grow, and dream without limitations. And maybe, just maybe, some parent watching their child pursue an impractical dream would remember this place and choose support over control, choose belief over doubt, choose love over expectations. I switched off the lights and walked out into the evening, leaving the ghosts of my past behind in a building that would shape the future. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's creation.